Welcome back to the Kuhner Report, Hour 3, 617-266-6868 here on AM 680, WRKO, and now on 93.7 HD2. My friends, as I've been talking about for the last couple of days, Lynn has now become, in many ways, ground zero for the immigration crisis engulfing this country. And now Lynn's mayor, Judy Kennedy, has now come out and said that Lynn is basically now at the breaking point. And here is what she told, according to My Fox Boston, quote, "We have been aware of the unaccompanied children issue for quite a while, and we were able to absorb a lot of these children early on," said Lynn Mayor Judith Flanagan Kennedy. Quote, "But now it's gotten to the point where the school system is overwhelmed, our health department is overwhelmed, the city's budget is being sustainably altered in order to accommodate all of these admissions in the school department." In other words, Lynn is in trouble, and they're feeling the brunt of this immigration crisis. To talk about this, it's my honor and pleasure to have Lynn Mayor Judy Kennedy. Mayor Kennedy, thank you so much for coming on the Kuhner Report.
Thank you for having me. Good morning, Jeff.
Mayor Kennedy, so let me ask you this. How much has this been affecting Lynn over the last couple years, and where are you feeling this influx of these illegal immigrant children the most?
It's definitely the school system. That's where we first started noticing that we were getting an unusual number of unaccompanied children from a province in Guatemala. It's very much like a state would be here. It's called San Marcos, I believe. And we started saying, geez, we have 60 new admissions. They're all coming from San Marcos. None of them are coming with parents. And, from there it just grew to the point where last year we had 248 admissions from the country of Guatemala in our school system alone. And that's not saying that all of those are unaccompanied children, but at least 126 of them in the 9th grade are classified as such.
My God. Now,
yeah.
Mayor, how is this straining the school system's budget? Just for our listeners out there, how is it hurting you? The argument that many people make is we're a rich country, we should be a generous country, these are poor children, they need our help. What's the problem?
Well, our own children need our help, too. And the problem here is that I have no way of verifying ages, for one thing. So these children who are coming in are all claiming to be between 14 and 17 years old. A lot of them look much older, but we have no way of knowing. Now, they're also coming in with very little, if any, schooling from their home country. So they're illiterate in English. They're illiterate in Spanish. Many of them don't even speak Spanish. They speak a dialect, a type of tribal patois from their villages. So we have to place them somewhere in the school system. We did have a night school. We were told by child advocacy lawyers that that was not a substantially equal education to the day program. So we had to put them into a day program, and they're all going into the 9th grade. We have 639 total new out-of-country students in the school system for the past school year that just ended. That's an elementary school full of kids. We have over 1,000 over the last 4 years. That's almost a high school worth of kids, and we just don't have space anymore.
Mayor Kennedy, I have to ask you this. A lot of my listeners have been texting me and emailing me, why can't you just ask these children their age? In other words, if you suspect they're 18, 19, 20, why not just get documentation? How come you're not able to ask their age?
Because there is a directive. The superintendent received the directive. I did not, but I believe it came from the Department of Justice, by way of the Department of Justice, from the Office of Homeland Security, telling us that we were not to ask for verification of age. They come with papers. They're not birth certificates. They are what I would call transfer papers or processing papers, and they state a birth date on them. A lot of them are born January 1st. believe it or not, and we have to take that. They tell us we cannot ask for any other verification of age.
What about, how about a criminal background check? Many of them, if they're 18, 19, 20, God forbid, what if they're child molesters? What if they've been rapists? What if they've killed somebody? What if they're violent criminals? Is there any way that you can check that out?
No, you're expressing my concerns exactly. We don't get any criminal information with the people who come here. In fact, I can tell you that one person came and presented his papers to the school department, and amongst those papers was a warrant for his arrest. But because he couldn't read, he didn't know he was giving us his arrest warrant.
Wow. That's incredible. Have you been forced to hire more teachers, more part-time teachers? How is this impacting your budget that you have to accommodate this influx of all of these unaccompanied minors?
My school budget has gone up 9.3% this year. That is not, I just want to emphasize, it's not all due to the unaccompanied minors, but our school system, as I said, has grown to the point of introducing 1,000 new students in the last 4 years. So while the school department's budget has gone up over 9%, all of my other budgets have had to be drained 2%, 4%, in some cases 5%. I haven't had to lay anybody off yet. That's this year. But next year, who knows? I just have to keep feeding the money to the schools. I need more translators, more social workers, more parent liaisons, more teachers, more classroom space, and we've just run out of money. I cannot do this on my own anymore. We need help, first of all, we need this to stop, and secondly, we need help financially in accommodating all of these people.
We are talking with the mayor of Lynn, Judy Kennedy. She's at the center of the immigration crisis. National spotlight now being put on the influx that's pouring into Lynn here in Massachusetts. Mayor Kennedy, the overflowing classrooms, is this affecting the quality of education that our students are receiving because we have to divert so much attention and resources to this influx of all of these children from Guatemala?
Oh, without a doubt. And in fact, at the lower grade levels, this is a problem throughout the grades. And at the lower grade levels, we now have 4 elementary schools that could not accommodate their kindergarten classes. So we had to open a separate kindergarten center just in order to keep the class sizes at a decent level for these young kids. You can't have a 5-year-old in a class of 20 or 22 kids. It's not going to be conducive to their learning anything. So this center has cost us a couple of $2 million. Now you have to add in the administration for that, the energy and utility bills for that center, the bus transportation to get the children to and from their home districts into that center, and obviously, having to go out of your district when you're a 5-year-old child is making your day longer. It's making it tougher on these kids. Mine now are one's just graduated and one's a junior, so not so much for my children, but for the younger ones, I do worry about the quality of education. Lynn has always had a reputation as not having a very good school system, but I'll tell you, given the number of languages spoken there, given the diversity of the children that we have to educate, we consistently rank either first or second amongst the urban school districts in Massachusetts. We do have really good teachers and a really good education system for an urban community in the Commonwealth, and I don't want to see that suffer.
Mayor, you anticipated my next question. If you have all of this influx of these students coming from Guatemala, and as you say, many of them don't speak English, some of them don't even know Spanish, and many of them 16, 17, 18, 19, 20 years of age, what is this going to do to your dropout rate? And isn't that going to hurt your potential funding? Because if your performance is not as high as other schools, the school district is going to get penalized, correct?
Yes, and many of these children will drop out in the springtime. We're seeing a pattern since we've been living with it for a couple of years. They'll drop out in the springtime they'll work during the summer, they'll work into the fall, and then when the weather gets colder, they'll re-enroll in the school system and then drop out again the following spring. Each time a child drops out, it counts as a dropout. So, for example, we have one person who has dropped out and re-enrolled 4 times. That one person counts for 4 dropouts in the dropout data that we have to report to the state. Now, if we don't see improvements in our dropout data, the state can say that we're not doing our job as a school system, that we're not retaining our students. We are currently a level 3 school system. We have just emerged from level 4. We had a couple of schools that were considered level 4. We worked really hard. We turned them around. We're back up to level 3. But if our numbers start to plummet again, we could go back to level 4. The other problem we have is once a child enters the school system, under state law, they have to take the MCAS in year 2 of their enrollment in the school system. So now a lot of these kids are going to have to take the 10th grade MCAS. And if they can barely read and write, I don't see how they can score advanced or proficient on their MCAS scores, which is also going to hurt the data that we have to send to the state.
And that's going to hurt your funding in the long run, correct?
It could, and that's certainly not going to help, considering that our funding needs to be increased and not decreased. I mean, I've done what I can do. I've worked hard to stabilize the city's finances. When I came in, we had a Baa1 rating. We now have an A+ credit rating here in the city of Lynn, and I'm afraid this is going to just make all of my hard work go for nothing. And I don't want to see that happen.
Mayor, there's been a lot of concern on the health issue about diseases. And in particular, they're seeing incidences growing everywhere, not just in Lynn, of outbreaks of tuberculosis, of scabies, of chicken pox. At the border, they're even concerned about potential swine flu. Is there any danger to our students in terms of diseases spreading? Have you noticed a rise in TB, and are those students being vaccinated?
Okay, we do vaccinate these children before they enter the school system, and it has put a real strain on my health department. We do vaccinations for free for 4 hours a week, but we've had to hire extra nurses to administer the vaccinations because there are just too many people needing them. As far as the TB goes, we have seen fluctuations in the number of TB cases, but the ones that we're aware of, they are being treated. We also have to have a TB nurse now, and that requires more data collection for the state and so forth. I certainly don't think there's an immediate concern for any of our school children. I mean, I would not send my own children to school here if I thought there was a problem. But it does take a lot of action on the city's part to make sure that the schools are safe by making sure that these children get their vaccinations. And again, that falls on the city to do that and make sure.
According to the report in My Fox Boston, Public Health Director Marianne O'Connor says that she estimates the department has seen a 200% increase in vaccinations, particularly for TB, over the last couple of years. Is that true? I mean, my God, 200%. That's astronomical.
Yes, it is. And we have to assume that these minors have not received any of their vaccinations. So we have to start as if they were a one-day-old infant and administer the vaccinations that any United States child would have had from literally day one of his existence. And it's just become an ongoing problem for the health department, and we don't see any signs of it slowing down. I mean, I heard yesterday that another plane load of minors had arrived in Boston. I still haven't been able to confirm that, but I have to believe at least some of those children are coming to Lynn.
Now, I have to ask you the $64,000 question. And I talked about it earlier on my show. These kids, you're saying they're coming from a province in Guatemala, but overall they're coming from El Salvador, Honduras, Guatemala. That's a long way away. Now, I understand when they cross the border, if they would stay in El Paso because it's right there, or San Antonio because it's right there. But how the hell do they find their way not only to Massachusetts, but of all places, Lynn. In other words, is somebody telling them, are they being directed to say, go to Lynn, it's basically a de facto sanctuary city, they won't refuse you, you'll get health care, you'll get education, you'll get all the benefits, so go to Lynn. Have you seen any evidence of that? Why Lynn?
Well, first of all, tell me how I can refuse them legally. Because I can't. If the child arrives and says they want to be in my school system, I'm legally obligated to provide them with an education. I don't have any direct evidence that they are being directed here. However, let me go back to that first group of, say, 60 or so that we noticed had come in here a couple of years ago. They were all coming out of a place called the Jubilee Center in San Antonio, Texas. So I became curious as to what this Jubilee Center was. And I Googled it, and it seemed to me like nothing more than a charter school or a couple of different charter schools down there. Nothing to indicate that they were somehow a way station on the way from Guatemala to Lynn. But a lot of these people are asked when they cross the border, do you know anybody? Do you have a relative? Do you have a sponsor? And my suspicions are that there's somebody up here who's allowing his or her name to be used so that these children then can say, oh, sure, I know Juan Perez up in Lynn, and therefore they are directed up to Massachusetts and into Lynn.
I know, look, you're legally obligated. You have to accept these children. I understand that. What do you think needs to be done? In other words, can Lynn sustain this? If something is not done, when are you going to reach the breaking point, and what do you think needs to be done to stem this tide?
Well, I have reached the breaking point, and that's why I have decided to speak up nationally about this problem. And I have reached out to the Center for Immigration Studies in Washington, D.C. I am going down there next month to participate in a panel discussion about all of the strains that this puts on a community. And it's not just the fact that they're newcomers, because Lynn has always welcomed newcomers, and I do have a wonderful existing Guatemalan community. I want them to know that, and I want everyone to know that. This is not a question of being bigoted or xenophobic. It's a question of space, and it's a question of resources. So I'm starting at the Center for Immigration Studies. I am hoping that I will be able to reach some of the members of the Senate Judiciary Committee when I'm down there. I know that they may be on recess. They may still be in session. If they are in session and if they are still in Washington, I'm going to ask them for help, either by way of getting these children back to their home country or sending some resources, or when they do decide to resettle others, to pick other communities for resettlement, because Lynn is only so big. It's the 9th largest city in Massachusetts, and we have the 5th largest school enrollment in Massachusetts. And I have tried to work, I worked with Senator Brown's office for a couple of months, and when he was no longer in office, I then turned to Congressman Tierney's office, but I have gotten nowhere at the local level, and I feel that I have to go to the national level to get some help from my city, and I will do that.
Mayor Kennedy, there are reports out from National Review Online, which have been picked up by other media outlets, that apparently the article names 2 people who, I looked at the pictures of them, there's no way they're 14 or 15. They've been placed in the 9th grade. They look, frankly, 35 or 40. One is a man, one is a woman. These are clearly much older adults. First of all, what do you make of that article? And should parents be concerned that their 14-year-old child is sitting in a classroom with a 35, 40-year-old male adult who, God forbid, may be a criminal, may be a rapist? We have no idea what that person's criminal background is.
They're not the only 2. I saw those photos. I do not process any of the people who went to the schools. That's done through the school system and the Parent Information Center, but I did ask to look at some of the intake papers for some of these people who have been coming in. I agree with you. In my opinion, no way are they anywhere near their teens. They're 20s at a minimum, probably in their 30s. And again, I can't verify it. Now, as far as should parents be uncomfortable, yes, they should be uncomfortable. There's no way a child should be sitting next to a grown adult in a ninth grade classroom. Should they be worried? No, I really don't think that anything untoward is going to happen in a classroom. Frankly, the reports I've heard is that the guys are hitting on the teachers, not on the students. That doesn't make it right, but I just don't know what else I can do. As I said, we tried a night program, and we were told that was not legally permissible because these children deserved an education equal to the day students, and we just couldn't provide 990 hours of night programming.
Mayor, let me ask you one final question.
Sure.
What has been the response from the community in Lynn? What are you hearing from citizens, from voters, from parents? Are they upset about this situation? Do they share your concerns that Lynn is now at the breaking point?
They're very concerned. They've asked me if they can tell me when the buses are coming in, and we want to start a blockade the way Marietta did. Now, we don't have big yellow school buses coming in. It hasn't been that kind of an organized influx. It's been much more of a trickle, but a constant trickle. They've asked me if they can hold a rally on the steps of City Hall. I said, go right ahead. No permit required. Speak up. Call your congressman, call your senator, and let them know what's going on. Most of them are just wishing that I could do more. I have not had one negative reaction from any of the citizens of Lynn thus far.
I mean, I have to say, Mayor, if you don't mind me, I mean, I know it's an interview and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I got to tell you, I'm listening to you now. You've been with us, very generous of your time, 20 minutes. It's like your hands are tied. I mean, I'm just listening to you and it's like you want to do something, but you can't. Either it's because of the state or because of the federal government. Am I misreading you?
No, you're absolutely correct, and that's why I'm going to Washington, because if I can't do this on my own, and all of the decision-making is out of my control, I have to go to the people that make the rules and see if they can't change the rules or allow me some decision-making, allow me some options that I don't have right now, because I'm open to suggestions. If you have any ideas of what I can do to alleviate this problem, I'll be happy to entertain them, and I'll bring them down to Washington with me.
Can you send them to Somerville?
I think Mayor Curtatone would be a little bit upset about that.
Well, he said it's no longer illegal to be illegal in Somerville. I figure if he wants some, Mayor, just say, you know what, send them to Somerville.
He's as tolerant a person as I am, and that's the message I really want to make sure people get. I don't ever want to see Lynn portrayed as bigoted or closed-minded because the people here are not, but we are not wealthy. We don't have big spaces for our houses. A lot of our houses sit on 5,000 square feet of land the way mine does. We're a dense city, and we don't need to increase to the population density anymore because there's just no more room. It becomes a hazard, becomes a health hazard, it becomes a fire hazard, and it's just not sustainable in the long run, and I want to put a stop to it before it's gone beyond the breaking point for my city.
We have been talking with Lynn Mayor Judith Flanagan Kennedy. Mayor Kennedy, thank you so much for coming on the Kuhner Report. We really appreciate it. And Mayor, to all of the members out there in Kuhner country, Mayor Kennedy has generously agreed on August 14th, we're going to be holding a major town hall. Here, where's it going to be? At the at the WGBH building. We're going to give you more information in the coming weeks. But myself, Mayor Kennedy, and others, we're going to hold a town hall on immigration. You've been absolutely superb on this, Mayor Kennedy, and I want to thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
God bless you. 617-266-6868, 831 on WRKO. My friends, I got to ask you. You heard the interview with the mayor of Lynn. To the liberals out there, are you finally waking up? Let's take it to Angela Anderson in the newsroom. 8:39 here on the great WRKO. Jeff Kuhner, Boston's bulldozer, cleaning up the liberal bull. 617-266-6868 is the number. Well, you just heard the mayor of Lynn, Judy Kennedy. It's an invasion. They're swamped. The school system is breaking. The healthcare system is breaking. This is not sustainable. And as she said, someone's got to be directing them because you have all of them coming from one particular province in Guatemala. And so, my friends, this is an orchestrated campaign. I have been saying this from the beginning. And notice, you want to win this issue? You want to really turn this upon the Obama regime and upon the Democrats and upon the liberals who are responsible for this invasion and this catastrophe, for the sellout of this country? It's very simple. They're being deliberately dumped in working class, middle class areas like Lawrence, like Lowell, like Lynn, like Chelsea. But notice where they're not being sent. To Marblehead, to Wellesley, to Brookline, to Newton. All of these limousine liberals who talk about compassion and diversity and tolerance. They don't want them in their neighborhood. They don't want them in their schools. They don't want them in their hospitals. They don't want them in their health clinics. They don't want them with their children. So they use Lynn and Chelsea and Lowell as their dumping ground. It's very simple. Have every town vote on whether they want to accept these illegal immigrants. Let these liberals, let their money match what their mouth is. I mean, to me, it's very simple. Put your money where your mouth is. You talk a big game. You always talk about compassion. You always talk about the children. Let me ask Nancy Pelosi. She's the one that actually walked down to the border and said, they're all Americans. They're all God's children. Suddenly now, by the way, she doesn't mind the church and religion. Have you noticed that? Suddenly she's not talking about separation of church and state. But let that go. Adopt them. Adopt them. I adopted 2 kids. Grace and I sponsor kids in Africa. By the way, Muslims and Christians, because we don't care about their religious background, because to us they're starving children. But again, let that go. You love them so much, adopt them. Take 2. I took 2. I adopted 2. Take 2 kids. Adopt 2 kids. Put your money where your mouth is, Piranha Pelosi. Same thing with Chief Spreading Bull. Adopt them. Dump them in Cambridge. Oh, you don't want them in Cambridge. No. Because then your $1.7 million mansion, you of the 99%, you the hater of the 1%, the enemy of the so-called 1%, you don't want them bringing your property values down, huh, Chief? You phony, you fraud, you. So, very simple. If Nancy Pelosi says they're all God's children, they're all Americans. They're all Americans. Fine. Have them go to San Francisco. Let San Francisco vote and see if they want them. I will bet anybody the best steak dinner at the best steakhouse in Boston. You pick the steakhouse. I will bet you the best steakhouse dinner. Okay, the best steak dinner. 99.9999% of towns will not want to have any one of these children come in. And every single one of those liberal towns will vote niet. No. Nada. Because they're hypocrites. They want you to live with the consequences of their so-called compassion. 617-266-6868. Lines are loaded. Brian, you're up next. Thanks for holding. You're on the Kuhner Report. Welcome, Brian. Hello, Brian. Did we lose Brian? Okay, Linda, you're up next. Thanks for holding. Go ahead, Linda.
Jeff, thank you so much for taking my call. Welcome back from vacation.
Oh, it's great to be back. Thank you.
I really missed you, but I did like Mike Siegel and even, what's her name? Carolyn Fox. She was really good, too. My point is, I'm a transplant from Detroit, Michigan. I have lived in Lynn now for 31 years. And I applaud Mayor Kennedy for coming on the radio and going on Fox News last night to express her opinion. And I really respect her for that. I sense her frustration. It is my frustration as well, and as well as my neighbors and a lot of people I know who live in Lynn. We cannot sustain these illegal aliens in this country, not 1 minute more. I cannot understand why they are not turned back at the border. Why are they bused or flown up here to this state to be processed up here and to be later told, well, you could be deported? I don't get it. We are not a border state, at least not with the southern border. It is absolutely beyond ridiculous. And we have a president and an administration who cares not about the law. They care more about votes and nothing about the law. Our governor wipes his hands of everything. It is left on the backs of people like Mayor Kennedy and all the local mayors here to deal with this problem, as well as the sheriffs. And I am sick of it. I don't want to see my property taxes go up one more penny to take care of these illegal aliens. And by the way, these unaccompanied minors that we've taken in Lynn are up to ages 24 and higher. Why they're in the school, why they're sitting along somebody's 14 or 13-year-old daughter or son is beyond me. And if they're hitting on teachers right now in the school system, like Mayor Kennedy said, it's just a matter of time before something happens to somebody's child, whether it's in school or outside of school or in some dark parking lot some night or up in the wooded area. Something's going to happen. And one more point I want to make, Jeff. This is impacting every single American in this country. We have a high unemployment rate, especially among blacks and Hispanics. And coming from Detroit, I lived through the race riots of 1967, and believe me when I tell you, I lived right in the city of Detroit. It was not pretty that summer. And I'll tell you right now, it's not going to happen this year or next year or maybe 5 years down the road. But 10, 15, 20 years down the road, after we've absorbed millions and millions of uneducated, unskilled, illegal aliens who cannot speak our language, who don't want to work, who drop out of school, this is going to happen in this country on a major, major basis. We are going to have race riots like nobody has ever seen in this country.
Linda, you absolutely nailed it. I'm telling you, it's one of the best calls I ever heard.
Thank you, Jeff.
God bless you, Linda, because that's exactly what I was... Linda, I don't know if you work for the NSA, because I'm telling you that's exactly what I was telling Cooksey last night on the phone. We were talking about this. I said, let me tell you what's going to happen. That's why this is a concerted plan. That's why the dear leader wants them in. That's why they flooded this country. First of all, your property taxes in Lynn, and my friends, it's going to go town after town. It's not just going to be Lynn, are going to go through the roof. Who do you think has to pay for this swollen, bloated school system? You do. Who do you think has to pay for all those vaccinations? You do. Who do you think is going to pay for all that welfare and public housing and EBT cards? You. Your income taxes are going to go up, your sale taxes are going to go up, and your property taxes are going to go right through the roof. Okay, that's number one. Number two, and more importantly, as we now start fighting over dwindling resources, because so much of this is being diverted for these illegal immigrants that are pouring in, we're balkanizing the country. The country it's almost like a form of tribalism. You're now going to see this country, resentment is going to grow, group by group, community by community. The veterans are now complaining, saying, we're getting pink slips, we're basically being fired, we're being kicked out of a job, but there's billions of dollars for illegal immigrants? I swear to you, God is my witness. You now have blacks and African Americans who were once the cornerstone of support for the dear leader. Nobody went out to vote for him more in 2008 and 2012 than African Americans. You know what they've concluded? What Jeff Kuhner told them 6 years ago. Now they're saying, Jeff, now they're saying we should have listened to you, Jeff. I said, you're the ones that are going to be shafted the most. You're going to take it on the chin the most. Why? They're dropping like flies in Chicago. Let me give you an example. Just on the 4th of July weekend alone, that weekend alone, 9 were massacred, 60 wounded in one shooting spree after another. It's a freaking bloodbath down there in Chicago. Have jobs improved? No. Has unemployment improved for the black community in many of these urban cities? No. In fact, these illegals are stealing jobs that used to be done by blacks and Hispanics. The situation there hasn't gotten better, it's gotten worse. So on Friday, many of them sick and tired of this, now they're seeing all of these illegals being bussed across the country, flown across the country into Chicago with free education, free health care, vaccinations, billions of dollars. Now the president wants $3.7 billion to address this. You know what the African Americans, the blacks of Chicago, said as they were protesting? Where's the money for us, Mr. President? We've been Americans for hundreds of years. Many of our ancestors, in fact, were slaves. And now these strangers, these foreigners, now come in, and you have billions of dollars for them. We need cops on the streets of Chicago. We need law enforcement on the streets of Chicago. Our schools are crumbling. Gang violence is out of control. And you tell us there's no money? There's no money for teachers? There's no money for police? There's no money for basic infrastructure? But suddenly, when it comes to buying more votes, when it comes now to swamping and invading the country, then there's money. There's billions of dollars. This is from my former paper, The Washington Times. It's also been reported in the Chicago media. At that protest on Friday, which was initially about that shooting spree that killed 9 people and more than 60 injured, many of the protesters were so livid. Here's what they said. Quote, for the president to set aside all of these funds for immigrants and have forsaken the African American community, I think that's a disgrace. Here's what the man told the blog Rebel Pundit. He will go down as the worst president ever elected. That's one of the Chicago community activists and protesters in Chicago. That's what the blacks are now saying about the dear leader in Chicago. He will go down as the worst president ever elected. Bill Clinton was the African American president. They're now nostalgic for Bubba over this guy who keeps telling us he's the first black president. He's the first black president. He's the first black president. Do we have the audio of the Chicago protest? Brittany, do we have that audio? Okay, here's the audio. Don't even take my words for it. Don't even take my word for it. Here is now what African Americans protesting in the south side of Chicago, his home turf, are saying about the dear leader. Roll it, Brittany.
He's going to go down as being one of the worst presidents ever. Today, if you look at the time that we brought here as slaves 400 years ago, we got the same results today. We live in Beirut somewhere. Ambulance, fire department, police running up and down the street, all around our community.
Oh, my block is always dark. Dark. Even on the sunniest days. Days. I can't go outside and play. Play. On my block. Oh, my block. On my block. Oh, my block.
Do something for our children. Have the same love for these young people like you got for the ones across the border, and you want to save them. President Barack needs to pay attention to Chicago. If he cannot pay attention to Chicago and the African American community, he needs to resign. Okay, we got a mayor in our city and our president of the United States who have passed legislation and have given up funding to create opportunities for new citizens to come into the United States, ignoring people who've been born and raised here. With the president setting aside all of these funds for immigrants and forsaking African American community and African American families, I think that's a disgrace. And Barack is from the heart of 55th in the city of Chicago. he saw this as a state senator, and he did not pay attention then.
Mr. President, we're asking for you. You're spending billions of dollars in Texas, but we got a problem here in Chicago. We will not stand by this here and keep letting this senseless killing and shooting happening in our community.
Again, as I say, he will probably go down as the worst president ever elected. Bill Clinton was the African-American president.
.905 here on the Kuhner Report. Jeff Kuhner, Boston's bulldozer. 617-266-6868 is the number. My friends, Joe Battenfeld from the Boston Herald, political columnist and writer, is now joining us here at the Kuhner Report on AM 680 WRKO. Joe, thank you so much for coming back on the air, my friend.
Oh, no problem, Jeff. How are you doing?
Good. Hey, Joe, I want to talk to you about two things. One, Elizabeth Warren, and two, the growing probation department scandal and how it could enmesh House Speaker Bob DeLeo. Let me ask you about Elizabeth Warren first. CNN has a big profile piece on her, basically saying she's become a Democratic rock star. There's talk about a stealth 2016 presidential tour. She was recently in West Virginia giving a very populist anti-big business speech, very well received by Democrats. Do you think she could possibly be the dark horse candidate for the Democratic presidential nomination in 2016?
I do, Jeff, and I'm not just saying this because it's actually good for us. To have Elizabeth Warren run nationally, it would be, can you imagine what all the calls and everything we get out of that? That would be great for us because we have something to talk about. But I do think she's on a stealth presidential tour. As a freshman senator, why do you go to West Virginia, Kentucky, Michigan? She's going to all these places. And why else would you do it? That's what presidential candidates do. So I think she's out there building up her name and getting all these glowing stories because I don't know if she'll run against Hillary, but Hillary Clinton doesn't look like a sure thing at all anymore. So I think it's smart for her if she's really interested to get out there. And I'm sure she's having people tell her all the time they want her to run because if you look at the websites, the liberal websites, she's all over the place, and if you look at the comments, people love her. They don't like Hillary. They want like a true liberal to run. They view her as a true liberal, like an Obama. So I do think that she has, as crazy as it sounds to us, I think she is on a stealth presidential tour. I don't know whether she'll actually run, but there's a decent chance of it.
Joe, in your opinion, do you think she can defeat Hillary, championing the progressive wing of the Democratic Party, and maybe playing off the fatigue of the Obama years, Hillary's very weak performance as Secretary of State? She's an old, tired face, ties to the Clinton administration scandals of the 1990s. Do you think if she runs as a progressive insurgent, you think she could topple Hillary?
I don't know if she could topple Hillary. I mean, we've seen progressive insurgents before, like Howard Dean and others. They catch fire. But in the end, they usually don't win the nomination because there's a move by the Democratic Party honchos to keep the more establishment person in. So I don't know if they would trust Elizabeth Warren as their nominee against a Republican, even like, say, Mitt Romney. I don't know if they would trust that, so they would probably push for Hillary in there. I don't know. I don't think she could beat her, but I mean, look at the Democratic Party today. It's definitely getting more liberal all the time, and they want someone like her in there, regardless of the fact that I think the thing that will really hurt Elizabeth Warren is her total lack of foreign policy experience, any at all. I mean, it's just nothing, and this is like a huge issue to a lot of people Do you want her really in charge of like going after terrorism, that kind of thing? And I think Hillary would use that against her. Hillary, if she did challenge Hillary, they would throw everything at her. You know the Clintons, Jeff, and they don't take prisoners. They don't have any problem attacking a fellow Democrat. So it would be tough for her, I think. But I think she's hanging around in maybe the plans that Hillary will not end up running.
Joe, I got to ask you then about the second big story. Now the federal judge, who's now been presiding over the probation department corruption scandal, the case involving the head of the probation department, John J. O'Brien, and his top two aides, is now allowing the the prosecution, to basically point the finger towards House Speaker Bob DeLeo. Right. That it was DeLeo who was masterminding the corruption, the racketeering, the quid pro quo, whereby legislators were able to get family members, friends, cousins, relatives, cushy jobs, illegally at the probation department in exchange for legislative favors and in particular for supporting DeLeo as House Speaker. Do you think we could have another House Speaker that will be forced to resign because of allegations of corruption?
I actually, and this is sad to say, but I don't think so. I think that the DeLeo thing is amazing to most of us. In fact, it was the judge who asked the prosecutors, are you alleging that DeLeo is part of the criminal conspiracy or led the criminal conspiracy? And the prosecutor says yes. So the judge is putting it right out there. But, and DeLeo actually, is in trouble. I think that's why he's releasing all these statements. And so he may not end up getting prosecuted, though, because the feds have not had the cojones to go after any lawmakers. In this whole trial, not a single lawmaker is on trial, and the judge and I think the jury is going to be saying, why isn't DeLeo on trial if he's the head of the criminal conspiracy? Why are you asking us to convict O'Brien? So I think the case will either get quickly dismissed by the judge or the jury will reach a not guilty verdict very quickly this week, and this case will go away, and the prosecutors will not end up going after DeLeo. They won't want to touch it, because they didn't have, Carmen Ortiz, for all her bluster, didn't have the cojones, like I said, to go to actually indict any lawmakers. So they're just going to hope, I think, this thing goes away. And DeLeo does have a point about Ortiz. He said in his statement yesterday, he put it right back on Ortiz, saying, well, Carmen Ortiz, how do you think you got your job? It was because Ted Kennedy asked to put her in there, a politician. So her very appointment was a political favor, really. And it's not the same as DeLeo trading votes for, his speakership for jobs for votes. But, he's pointing out that there's cronyism at the State House all the time. And so I think that's a smart move by him and putting it right on Ortiz. So I don't think he's going to get prosecuted. I think the U.S., unless there's a Republican U.S. attorney, I don't think they're going to go after any lawmakers at all. DeLeo has been hurt, but amazingly enough, I don't think he's going to get on trial. They would have done it. Why wouldn't they have done it before?
Joe, I don't like to speculate, but I got to ask you this because you're one of the best political handicappers in this state. If the jury does convict, I understand a lot of people are agreeing with you. It looks like they probably will go not guilty, but let's just say they do convict.
You never know. A jury, you can't really tell, so you never know.
So let's say O'Brien and his two aides are convicted. Then, do you think the prosecution, fresh upon that victory, can either flip O'Brien, use it as leverage, or then go after DeLeo and the other bigger fish?
I still don't think they will. I mean, I think if they do get a conviction, they're going to say, we're vindicated, and I think there will be calls for investigation or indictments of DeLeo and others, but I just don't see it happening. It's a Democratic U.S. attorney, and they didn't do it before for whatever reason. They were told, I believe, probably by the Obama administration, look, especially in election year, Jeff, they're not going to indict these people, go after these people, and help Charlie Baker's campaign.
Mm-hmm.
They're just never going to do it because the Obama administration will say, look, you can't do this in an election year and help elect Charlie Baker. There's no way they're going to do it.
We have been talking.
Sad to say. But
Joe, I think you hit the nail right on the head. I got to tell you that. We have been talking with Joe Battenfeld, political columnist, writer at the Boston Herald, one of the best in the business. Joe, thank you so much for coming on the Kuhner Report.
Thanks a lot, Jeff.
Take care, Joe.
Okay.
617-266-6868 is the number. So there you have it. You have the House Speaker now involved, allegedly, in a massive racketeering criminal conspiracy. That's politics as usual in Massachusetts. Notice how the Democrats run this state like Whitey Bulger would run it. It's a mafia state. You've got that. So Porky Pig is now angry. He's blasting statements in the media saying he doesn't like to be fingered by Carmen Ortiz. You've got now Elizabeth Warren, that phony Indian, chief spreading bull. Now she's becoming the great hope. I was going to say the great white hope. Maybe I should say the great Indian hope of the Democrats and the progressives, the uber liberals, the moonbats, and the Democratic Party. While all this is going on, Lynn is burning, Massachusetts is burning, and the border is burning as we're being invaded by third world illegal immigrants. 617-266-6868 is the number. Carol, you're up next. Thanks for holding, and welcome.
Hi, Jeff. Welcome back.
Oh, it's great to be back. Thank you so much, Carol. I missed you guys.
We missed you, believe me.
No, I heard about Carol and Fox, but let that go, Carol.
Yeah, it's hard to. But I just want to say this administration is out of control from a national level down to our state level. Now, I was wondering if you could tell me why cities or towns can't pull out of the Commonwealth. Why can't we do that so we don't have to uphold the laws? And why don't we just rent our own buses and send them back to Texas and where they come from, the illegals? And then why don't we rally the State House, do something like that about everything that they're doing to us with these illegals?
I think, Carol, look, again, I think it's going to have to come down to that. It's what I find depressing is we're starting to become like a third world banana republic. It's like Ukraine. That you want something done, you got to protest. So, we did it with Justina Pelletier. We won that one. The state was wrong. DCF was wrong. Mini-Me was wrong. Through our actions, we helped free Justina Pelletier from being essentially kidnapped and tortured by DCF. We got to do this on everything. So again, Kuhner Country it's like to the barricades again. Another major rally up on Beacon Hill in front of the State House to demand what? Don't dump children with possibly with tuberculosis or members of MS-13, gangbangers, and sick children, and bankrupt our communities. That we have to ask for that now. It's like a banana republic. You have people indicted. You have corruption. You have cronyism. You have nepotism. Nobody's held accountable. This is how the Democrats roll. And when I say something, when I'm the only voice of reason and sanity, for the most part, in the media in the state, I'm the extremist. To me, it's incredible. So, no, I think there's no question about it that what the people of Lynn have to do is they're going to have to rise up, they're going to have to prevent these buses from coming in, and they're going to have to say, no, I'm sorry, if you're an illegal immigrant, we don't want you in our school, we don't want you in our healthcare clinics, we don't want you in our hospitals, we don't want to pay for your public housing and your welfare and your EBT cards. We didn't ask you to come in. No one asked us. We never voted on this. We never gave our approval. And so you have the mayor coming on my show. It was sad. I felt sorry for her. There she is. She's almost pleading, saying it's 1,000 kids. That's a high school. I don't know if I can pay my teachers. Classes are overflowing. They're overcrowded. I've got 18, 19, 20, 21-year-olds posing as 14-year-old ninth graders. We've got 35, 40-year-olds. She said there's more than 2. We're under siege. We're going to go bankrupt. We're going to go bust. The state tells me I can't do anything. The federal government says I can't do anything. And here's what I find most despicable, okay? Because I know Lynn. Cooksey lives in Lynn. I've driven through Lynn. Cooksey took me around Lynn. Laurel lives in Lynn. He's the person who's taking our calls. He's our phone, our call screener. Who protects him? Cooksey's property taxes are going to go through the roof. He's got a son. He's got a wife. Who protects her as she walks down the street? Who protects little Noah when he's going to go to school? And he's got to be beside these potential criminals and rapists, people we have no idea their criminal backgrounds. Children being brought in with diseases that were eradicated here decades ago. Measles, tuberculosis, scabies. God forbid the swine flu. I hope not the Ebola virus. That's my big fear. The President of the United States. This is what I find. And notice, did you notice how defensive she was? I felt sorry for her. I'm not racist. Please don't think I'm racist. I'm not bigoted. Of course you're not. Your job as the mayor of Lynn is to protect the interests of the citizens of Lynn. The job of the President of the United States is to protect the interests of the people of the United States. That's not racism. Stupid. Forgive me. I'm arguing now. I'm talking to the liberals. It's patriotism. It's fork and knife survival. It's civics, nationhood 101. And again, I come back to this point that they have no rebuttal to. None. Why are we the only country in the world that does this? Canada doesn't do it. Europe doesn't do it. Mexico doesn't do it. China doesn't do it. Nobody allows people to come in by the tens of thousands. There's 50,000 and counting, for God's sakes. It's an endless wave. You don't even know who they are. You don't know if they're murderers, rapists, what diseases they have. You don't think of that 50, 60,000? Many of them 20, 22, 24, now we're finding out 35, 40 years old. There's not one terrorist among them? And all it takes is just one? And when I say protect our border, when I say build that wall, when I say put America and Americans first, you liberals still have the gall to call me the racist, to call me the extremist. Very simple. Now it's time for you to put your money where your mouth is. You talk the talk, I want you now to walk the walk. Put them in your community. Take them into your home. You say you're compassionate? No problem. Go to Lynn, scoop up a kid and put him in your home. Oh, not in your community, you hypocrite, you. 617-266-6868 is the number. 923 on the great WRKO. Should we be allowing all of these immigrants coming into our communities? What do you say? All of your calls next. 925 here on the great WRKO. Jeff Kuhner, Boston's bulldozer. 617-266-6868. Mike, you're up next. Thanks for holding and welcome.
Hi, Jeff.
Hey, Mike.
Yeah, you know what this really irks me is, imagine the balls of these people to come to another person's home, squat your ass down, take whatever we give you, and then, and the reason America's the only country that does it is because the communists, the fascists, and all the other social governments of the world have to take us down. And they're doing it by, this is one method, and Obama knows it. But I just can't get over the ignorance, the audacity of these countries to come into our homes and basically you know what on us, and we don't do anything. As far as that mayor's concerned, she's neglecting her duty. She should have the police department on the borders of that city, throwing these people the hell out of there.
Thank you for that call, Mike. 617-266-6868. Brian, you're up next. Thanks for holding, and welcome to the Kuhner Report.
Oh, hey.
Hey, Brian.
Hi, speaker. Hi, Jeff. Seattle calling. Want to say about this invasion of these, what I think is with criminal illegal aliens. First off, back in 1990, in Menominee, Wisconsin, I was attending University of Wisconsin, UW Stout. In order to get into, I wanted to go to Madison, Wisconsin, because it was a better school. But I didn't, my high school records showed that I had a business math credit instead of high school algebra and high school geometry. So I had to jump through the hoops to get the algebra and geometry courses. So the only way, there was two possibilities. One, go to the local school, high school, and take these credits. The school board turned me down, a vote of 5-3. Why? Because they said I would be, because I'm at the time I was 36 years old, 37, I don't know, somewhere around there. I would be a bad influence on the students. And yet you said, and it's well known, that a 45-year-old gray-haired people, criminals, illegal aliens, are being put in the ninth grade.
Ninth grade. Was that 14-year-olds?
Whatever. I'm just saying, I was born here in the Midwest. I now live out in Seattle. And yet, in order to jump through the hoops, they said at 37 years old, I would be a bad influence because they said, their rules said you can't be over the age of 19. All right, fast forward to 2006. My driver's license, state of Washington's driver's license expired in 2006. I had to show 5 forms of ID, a birth certificate, a divorce papers. I showed, they gave a list of like 12 different forms of ID.
Brian, brother, I hear you. When I went to get my license, when I moved up from D.C., when I moved here to Massachusetts, and so I went to the Department of Motor Vehicles, you wouldn't believe the ID they were asking from me. I mean, they wanted everything. And I'm looking around, I swear, you can hear them speaking Spanish. You can tell they don't speak a word of English. I know they're from either Mexico or Guatemala or wherever. Nothing, no problem. You want a license? No problem. I swear to you, I know I said it yesterday, but I gotta say it again. I can't get over the fact, I went up to visit some family and relatives in Canada. You know, that third world basket case. And I went up to Canada. Couple of days with my family. I've been here how many years? I've paid taxes for how long? My children are both adopted from the United States. In fact, Ashton's family in particular goes back generations. They stop us at the border when I come back in. They were grilling me for 15 minutes. In fact, who's Ava? Who's Ashton? Can I see Ashton? Can you roll down your window? Hold on. I want a closer look at Ashton. I'm like, what do you think? I'm smuggling a kid? What is this? It was unbelievable. No, what's going on is this. And it's time somebody said the truth. Call a spade a spade. Americans are being discriminated against in their own country. And it doesn't matter if you're white, black, Hispanic, Asian, it doesn't matter. You are now treated as second-class citizens compared to illegals. We're being dispossessed in our own homeland. 617-266-6868 is the number. 9:31 on the great WRKO. More with your calls after this short news break. Let's take it to Angela Anderson. 9:40 here on the great WRKO. Jeff Kuhner, Boston's bulldozer, cleaning up the liberal bull. 617-266-6868 is the number. Now, I've been saying this for a long time, and it's now becoming pretty obvious. the desire to destroy borders in this country, to allow unlimited illegal immigration into the United States, is obviously part of an attempt to create a new world order. And at the heart of this new world order is to destroy any sense of nations, any sense of national sovereignty, any sense of nationalism, but to eventually create a one-world socialist government. Now, many of you are going to say, Jeff, oh my God, Jeff, that's so conspiratorial, Jeff, oh my God, don't say that. You're scaring us when you talk like that, Jeff. Check out this story. Senior members at the United Nations are now meeting in which they are discussing about intervening in the United States in this immigration crisis, saying that all of these supposed illegal immigrant children being dumped across the border are in fact political refugees who are fleeing allegedly violence, the drug cartels, persecution in Central America, and therefore they should be granted asylum by the American government. And so the UN is now discussing, and they're going to make an announcement allegedly later today, according to several media reports, where they're going to come out and essentially say they want to grant protective status to these, all of these 50,000, 60,000 illegals coming across, saying that they want to be officially designated as refugees and thereby try to force the United States and the Obama regime to grant them political asylum as refugees. The UN is now intervening in our own internal affairs. They're now basically telling us they're going to try to use international law to violate our sovereignty, to violate our our borders, and to tell us we must accept all of these illegals because they deem them to be refugees and hence we should grant them asylum. You take away a country's borders, you take away the nation itself. That's the whole idea behind massive illegal immigration. And I've said it before and I'll say it again. Here is the deal that I would offer Obama. You really want to expose him? This is the deal that I would offer him. Okay, this would expose him. If Boehner is listening, you want to win this? Here's how you win this. You know what, dear leader? You're right. No, you're right, dear leader. We have to be compassionate and tolerant and have respect for diversity. We're going to accept all of them. Every single one of them. I don't care if they've got the swine flu. I don't care if they've got TB. Whatever, the measles, whatever they've got. All of them. And on top of that, we're going to give amnesty to every illegal immigrant in this country. Everyone. Green cards, everybody. Food stamps, everybody. Welfare, everybody. Public housing, everybody. They get everything. Absolutely everything. Except one thing. Just one. Just one. They're not allowed to vote. Like other people who are permanent residents in some European countries, take Germany, where they have a big Turkish population, they're not allowed to vote. Because they're not considered ethnic Germans. So it doesn't matter, their children, their grandchildren, they can stay, they can go to school, they have access to health care, they can get any job they want. However, they're just not allowed to vote. Basically, they're permanent residents, perpetually. Generation to generation to generation. That's it. They came here illegally, so there has to be some penalty, as the French say, a penalty. And so that's the price. It's legalization. It's permanent residency. You talk about compassion. All the welfare you can handle. All the food stamps, all the Obama phones, any job you want, any welfare benefit, you get it all. Paid for courtesy of Uncle Sam. Just one thing, just one. They can't vote. Deal, no deal. No wall. There's no wall. We won't even ask for a wall. They can keep coming. You want 20 mil, 30 mil, 40 mil? Hey, we'll swallow all of Mexico. No problem. Just one condition. Just one. They can't vote. I give you everything, except you can't vote. Deal, no deal. God as my witness, he will not take that deal. And the Republicans would then expose him. Say, you see, it's not about the children. It's not about humanitarianism. It's not about compassion. It's about votes. It's about making the Democrats a permanent one-party majority in the United States of America. It's about power in the end. 617-266-6868. Donna, you're up next. Thanks for holding and welcome.
My God, Jeff, your brain and my brain must be linked somehow. Listen, remember yesterday when I said about Obama's that money he wants being used for, quote, leadership training?
Yes.
Okay, well, that's for those illegals, and I said that was code for social activism, and the illegals would be used for that. Now, by getting them from mostly this specific area and planting them in specific working class areas, it looks like not only they'll be used for it looks like they've been recruited for that. And I said, why now? This is another light bulb going on my head after I talked to you. Why now, when the drug cartels and the violence have been going on for decades, they will be used to steal the 2014 and 2016 elections? Project, for this thing about not being able to vote is baloney. Project Vote gets tons of illegal votes. They don't want voter ID. And this is going to be used for the one world and redistribution of wealth from the UN. Just like you said, if they don't win the election, they can't continue it. So they have to continue it. And then if the left is finally getting ticked about being turned on and lied to, he's done it on every scandal, every campaign promise. We yell our brains off about it. His supporters cry, oh, no, it's not true. Now that it's reaching critical mass, we're hearing a big, giant, oh, whoops. Well, then he also made a personal deal with the Clintons, and he gave his word to them. If you back me, I'll back Hillary for president. Now, gag, he's pushing Elizabeth Warren. Jarrett's and the Obamas can't stand the Clintons, so they're pushing Elizabeth Warren. He broke his own personal word. When has he ever kept his word to the public or even his personal word on this deal? I don't want to hear the left whine when we told them for years and they just attacked us. This is all about keeping the one world crap going from the UN, just like you said.
Bingo. Bingo. And Donna, okay, I'm serious as a heart attack. He has kept his word once. He has. Now think about this, because it's very revealing. You're right. He breaks his word to everybody. But he promised Bo Bergdahl, Saving Private Abdullah, and his parents, he was going to get him home at no matter what the cost. Now think about that. A Muslim convert who betrayed his country and then became an active Taliban sympathizer. That's the only guy Obama has ever kept his word to. That tells you everything you need to know about him. 617-266-6868. Allah, 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 Allah. Anthony, you're up next. Thanks for holding. You're on the Kuhner Report. Go ahead, Anthony.
Thank you, Jeff. What a great interview with Mayor Kennedy. Unfortunately, what I got from your interview is that she doesn't see it as a problem with the immigration. She sees it as a financial problem, and I feel bad for Cooksey, who has to pay the taxes in that town, because she's a liberal, and she sees it in the liberal view that we should have all these people in my town. I just can't afford to pay for them. So I'm going to Washington to get money for these kids. Not that there's a problem with the kids being there originally.
Anthony, you're right. To me, the argument should be send them back. Deport them. I mean, it's just, look, even if they stay, let's say they rain money on Lynn, it's disadvantaging all the other students. The overcrowding is not going to go anywhere. Lynn can't grow. Lynn is Lynn. It's limited by its boundaries. So the congestion's not going to go away. The crime's not going to go away. The disease is not going to go away. None of it's going to go away. 617-266-6868. And what I find shocking, and don't get me wrong, look, she's a good woman. She's trying to do the best she can. Please don't take this the wrong way. But every second paragraph when she talks, I'm not a racist. Please don't think I'm a racist. Of course you're not. Why would you even keep thinking about that? That's how much liberalism has penetrated our psyche, that we can't even defend our own community, our own survival, without thinking somehow it's bigoted or racist. Patriotism has now basically become a form of racism. That's what the left has done to this country. Andrea, you're up next. Thanks for holding and welcome.
Jeff, I just feel it's just so sad, and I could break down and cry right now because I always loved my country. And my husband and I looked at each other last night, and we said, he did it. He did it. He's not just doing it. He did it. And the only thing I don't understand, and I know you know history much better than I ever would, or I ever did, I remember even as a little girl and all growing up, and even my brother, who's an ultra-liberal, always said, America will always be America. There are all these safeguards in place to prevent us being taken over. But where are they? Where are these safeguards? I don't understand.
Well, see, Andrea, you're right. And that's what everybody used to say. And it's true. There are all these checks and balances, all of these safeguards, but it depends upon the hearts and minds and will of individuals, of men and women. If no one's willing to click that safeguard, it's useless. So here, Dick Cheney comes out again today, says Obama has exceeded his constitutional authority. Yes. And what are Republicans doing about it? Nothing. So if you're not willing to do anything, if you're not willing to impeach the president, if you're not willing to call him out on it, if you're not willing to hold him accountable, he can break every safeguard in the book. And that's what's happened in every other country in the world at one time in their history. And that's what the founding fathers warned us against. They said, you can keep this republic, but only if you want to. You have to love liberty and protect it at all costs. That's why the progressives wanted the school system. Because once you infiltrate the minds of the young and teach them to hate their own country, they won't want to defend it. And that's exactly what's happening now. 617-266-6868. As Reverend Jeremiah Wright would say, the chickens have come home to roost. 9:52 on the great WRKO. More with your calls next. 9:58 here on the great WRKO. Joe, you're up next. Thanks for holding, and go, my friend.
Hi, Jeff.
Hey, Joe.
I spoke to you once when you were sitting in for Savage, and I'm very concerned about the semiotics, or the optics, as Krauthammer put it, of Obama. Not the entire mythology would have collapsed. This stuff is not yet ready for the common understanding, but when Krauthammer used that word optics, everybody started parroting him. If he had stood at the border where that mess was going on, there would be no way he could support his legitimacy.
Joe, you're completely right. Look, I think this issue is going to hound the Democrats all the way into November. And if the Democrats don't steal the election, my friends, they're going to get wiped out. I got to go. See you all tomorrow. Same time, same place on WRKO.
News at the top and bottom, talk in between. Executing assigned host duties flawlessly because I can't do wrong. This is AM 680 WRKO, Boston.